why are you a poet?
I'm a poet because I had no choice. I think I was born a poet. Just the way I was born, being black, I was born gay, I was born in America, I was born in Chicago. And these are things that, I didn't really choose. I just found myself in that situation. I answered the call. I don't want to make it sound all, like dramatic and everything like that, but I really think that, if you're a poet, you know it. There you go, that's a rhyme. Poets know it. You heard it from me. Poetry to me is, it's as natural as breathing. I've always wanted to write. I've always had an interest, fondness in, for writing, for books, ever since I was 3 or 4 years old, I've been reading on my own, basically self-taught. My mom was in there somewhere. She helped me a little bit, but I really did take to books at a very early age, and I had an appreciation for them, a respect for them. I wasn't one of those kids that were like scribbling in them, with crayons and tearing the pages out and leaving the books on the floor and walking to the next room to get my donut. So I would show the books, the respect that they deserve. I would actually read them. So my mom knew that I was going to be doing something with books. I don't think I knew that I was going to be a writer until like maybe 5. Because I can actually remember one of the first things that I wrote. I gave it to my mom. I would write books for my mom. There were things that I had to do for assignments in class that I learned, from kindergarten on through, 6th or 7th grade. And then there were things that I would just write, on my own. I would write letters to my mom, like whenever I was sad, instead of like having like a conniption fit or something, frothing at the mouth like all the brats do, when they're doing their temper tantrums. I would actually write her a letter saying, "Dear Mom, I am angry. Why did you do this to me?" I would actually do it. I would even sign it. It's a very strange kid. And I would even put it in an envelope and mail it. But I didn't actually mail it anywhere because all I did was give it to her, or go from my room and go to her room or to the kitchen or wherever she was. Special delivery for Carolyn Kehinde. And it was a letter that I wrote. So, like I said, I was a very eccentric kid. When it came to writing and to drawing, I was so yeah, poetry just came natural to me, just like writing and drawing came natural to me. It was just a way for me to express myself, to get a sense of my identity, and to communicate with other people. It's very natural for me.
So you have 2 books out right now, Filthy Knowledge and Monkey Assassins.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about them.
Okay. Filthy Knowledge is my first book that came out in 2011. I met a fellow poet by the name of Glenn Burns. His stage name is BGK. I met him at Taft Street Coffee House, which is unfortunately is no longer in existence. This was downtown Houston. It was in the Montrose area. And Taft Street was like a church slash coffee shop slash bookstore slash community center. It was basically all things to all people. I met him on Tuesday night. Every Tuesday night they would do open mic poetry. You could also do music. You can go up on the stage and do whatever you like. He brought up the idea to me one day of actually publishing a book. He's like, would you like to put a book together? I'm like, yes, of course. So we started talking about that. We collaborated. He decided to use Lulu.com because he was under contract with them. He had a couple books of his own published through there. I think he's still using them. And I gave him my material. Actually, at one point, I think I gave him over 300 poems. We parsed that down to about 250. I think 250 made the cut. Yeah, I was like giving him so many poems. He was like at one point, he was like, "Stop! Enough! Don't give me any more. I need to finish this book." So I was like, "Okay." Because most of the poems that I gave him were stuff that I've written in the past 10 to 15 years. So Filthy Knowledge became an anthology of poetry. Yeah, I mean, the thing from like my high school years, from like I think age like 14 through like 36. Yeah, that entire area. But it's like I'd say most of my best poetry, which made the cut, was between the past 10 to 12 years of my writing. And then I did like maybe 20 or 25 brand new poems for Filthy Knowledge because I wanted it to be sort of like under the umbrella of this concept for Filthy Knowledge that I had come up with, which is sort of like a play on the Garden of Eden and the tree of good, the tree of knowledge of good and evil. So I have like an introduction where I talk about the Bible, Adam and Eve and that the serpent, in the garden, all of that stuff like that. I do to that, to kind of whet people's appetites and get them interested in where I'm going, thematically with my pieces. So I feel that most books that are well designed, they have like a purpose in mind. They have like a certain image. Usually when I write poetry, I have like a certain image. I start with an image in my head, and I try to write what that image is making me feel, and I try to describe the image as clearly as I can. It's really hard to capture an emotion, a feeling, an image that you see in your head that you can't let other people see because it's in your own head. But I think that that's what the best poetry does. It aspires to make that sort of like a short snapshot or like a short movie, in someone's head. A lot of my poems are, I think, sort of like almost like movies or pictures that are put together through the words. Because if you're really good at putting words together, you can have pictures in people's minds. They will relate to it as if they're like in theory. I do. I'm weird like that. But yeah, to me, it's writing and designing books is something that I've always wanted to do at a very early age, and I feel like I'm getting closer to what I've always wanted to do with this first book. With the second book, Monkey Assassins, because Monkey Assassins I put on Create Space, which is owned by Amazon.com. That's their self-publishing website, and I did this one on my own, as opposed to Filthy Knowledge, which was my own brainchild, but Glenn Burns, he was actually the impetus, the catalyst, because without him, Filthy Knowledge wouldn't exist, especially not in the form that it is now. I'm really proud of both my works, but Monkey Assassins I'm very proud of because I pretty much did it by myself, with the help of Cameron and Amanda. But I designed the books. I did the layout myself. The original cover design, it was based on a sketch that I did myself, as opposed to Filthy Knowledge, which was a picture that Glenn Burns chose. But I also designed my own logo, and I want to show you my logo because it's going to be on every single book that I publish. This logo here, I made for myself. And it kind of like, this is a concept of like mankind. That we have, roots in the earth, because, we're grounded, we're born on earth, so it's like, those are our roots. That's the tree. That's like the carnal side of us. But we also aspire, to be more spiritual. The things that we do, like with music, through art, through poetry, through religion. We have the spiritual side of us. So that's where the angel wings come from. And then in the middle here, we're all made of stars. Like we're part of the universe, so we're made of stardust. So the star represents, basically our corporeal nature. That our bodies will turn to ash. And also, the devil halo, I guess, the devil horned halo. That's the dual nature of man, good and evil. So there you have it. Sort of like to me, this kind of represents mankind. And that's the logo that I created. So I think if you're gonna brand yourself, and basically it's like marketing 101. You have to have something that people will automatically immediately recognize as something that's uniquely you. Just like Nike has the swoosh and McDonald's has the arching, the golden arch M's. I wanted this to represent me. So when people see me, even if they don't see my name, they're like, oh, that's Kehinde. And I kind of learned that as being a communications major, I guess, going through college.
Let's go on ahead and define poetry. What's poetry to you?
Poetry is, I think poetry is more of like a feeling and instinct, than it is something that you can actually nail down and define. This is poetry. It seems to be very fluid to me. It's like trying to define what music is, or what just art is in general, or what happiness is. Poetry is, to me, it's something that you wake up in the morning with that feeling. That there are beautiful things in the world, and you try to capture certain moments of beauty with your words. Honestly, that's the most honest way I can put it.
Okay.
Might sound kind of cheesy, but that's how I see it.
Do you feel that poetry is dead?
No. First of all, hip hop. Hip hop. Just the fact that rap music is now where rock music used to be. It is like it's pop music. It's basically the voice of the youth. And I say that kind of like being 40 years old and feeling like I'm no longer that youthful. So it's the voice of the youth. In my day and the generation that I was in. I actually am Generation X, I was born between those 2 years. I believe it was like 1972 to 1988, something like that. I guess that's where the Generation X kind of falls. People born within that spectrum. I was born in 74. I can remember when, we didn't have cell phones. We had, phones that were on the receiver. And there were two separate parts of the phone, and it would go, and then you would have to dial it. You'd have to, and you would pick it up. When you left the house, you didn't have your phone with you. It was still on the wall in the kitchen. We had television. We didn't have, multiple cable channels and stuff like that. You were really lucky if you had a satellite dish. If you were the first person on the block with a satellite dish, people would be going, ooh and ah, and, don't get struck by lightning and that sort of thing. We had a very, very limited amount of entertainment. It seemed like entertainment, knew, its place. There were boundaries. It wasn't like this sprawling mess. The thing that has has tentacles everywhere. gets into everything. Even advertisements. We had to worry about billboards and things on television and the occasional ads in newspapers and magazines. But now advertising is everywhere. It's just like you can't escape advertising. It's on the bus with you. It's on your pad. When you're writing your notepads, your laptops. You're constantly bombarded with commercialism and entertainment and buy this and buy that and watch this and watch that. It's pretty crazy. And I forgot the question.
Poetry. It's poetry day.
See, this is what I do. I talk like this. A lot of my poetry is like this too, where I ramble. Poetry is definitely not dead because it exists in different forms. It mutates. It is very chameleon-like. It can take many different shapes and forms. It's basically what's her name from the X-Men? The one that turns into you know what I'm talking about. Mystique.
But being a comic book fan, I should know that. But I didn't.
I know. Caught you off guard there.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah. Poetry is the mystique of literature. It can be anything that you want it to be. It can be anywhere you want it to be. I like street art, graffiti. I find that's very poetic. Poetry is also specifically, it's not like the fine art that you find like in some museum and you have to pay like, $30 at the door. Poetry should be very accessible to the public. In fact, it should be, a very common people type of voice to me. That's where poetry really has its strength and its power. It's from. I don't want to sound like I'm being too political, but as far as having the oppressed and the suppressed in society having a voice, I believe that's where the best poetry is. It's the voice for the voiceless. It's for like the forgotten people, the invisible people in society. To actually make themselves known and to say, I'm here, I exist, I'm important, and you need to be aware of me, and you need to deal with me, or there'll be a reckoning. Final pass. Okay. I'm from Chicago, so I get all Kanye Wests.
You mentioned earlier that poetry doesn't really sell a lot. Do you think that the market of poetry is just dead? And do you think that terrible market towards poetry presents a negative attitude?
Yeah, I don't think like the market necessarily is dead. It's just sluggish. It doesn't seem like there's like too much of an appreciation for poetry. It seems like most people want like those like dime store novels, that you see, and well, they're not dime, you pay a lot more than a dime for these novels now. But anything on the New York Times bestseller list, just for example, I'm not dissing the novelists at all because I actually aspire to be a novelist myself. But I can see that there is more of I think, for as far as like the major publishing companies to want to pigeonhole certain types of writers into a specific genre, and poetry can be very hard to define. Poetry is as unique as a person's birthmarks on their bodies or their thumbprints. Novels are generally very cookie cutter, especially the ones that are they always like have like a certain set goal. It's like there's like a definite beginning, middle, and end, and characters that you can instantly recognize. Things that I think people they become accustomed to seeing in certain books. Or like Gone Girl, which has been made into a movie. It's hard to make poetry into a movie. The last poem that I believe it was a full, it was like a book-length poem that became a screenplay was for colored girls who have considered suicide, which starred many people, Whoopi Goldberg, Janet Jackson, a whole bunch of people. And it was produced, the screenplay was written and directed. Well, the screenplay was written and it was directed by Tyler Perry. And there was bits of poetry, of course, the actual poem in the movie, but it's just obvious that poetry is not as, it can't really be turned into like a commercial, something that is just that put in the market, and you know it's going to sell. It's going to do very well because people have a set defined expectations as to what is going to come up. They want to have like a story. A lot of the poems that I write, I would say, have like a story. They seem to have like a beginning, a middle, and an end. And I like the fact that poetry doesn't have to have those things. So the fact that poetry is not cookie cutter is probably just relates to the fact that it's very hard to market poetry to the average reader because just from an early age we've just been we've been kind of like trained to expect certain things from it. And poetry defies expectation. So I think it's kind of hard to market. It's hard, to give to an ad exec and say, okay, here, sell this to the public. It's very different for many different
people. So technology's been changing throughout the years. You mentioned a little bit about technology earlier. I want to ask you, do you feel that poetry is evolving along with technology, or is it sort of back in the dark ages?
I think that my poetry is evolving. I know that there are a lot of poets that I admire, a lot of local poets, who have evolved with the times, who kind of like, work, certain catchphrases or the certain, syntax that they use. They utilize things that people, concepts and ideas and just ways of, relating to other people. Things that kind of like modernize the genre of poetry, if you will. There's a lot of old-fashioned poetry, iambic pentameter and stuff like that, which is there for a good reason. We should always study that. It's like learning the basics of like Greek, which is where English comes from. English language that we use. There's always going to be a need to study the classics, to appreciate the classics, because you have to know where you come from to know where you're going and to know where you are now. There's always the past. The past it helps to not necessarily define the present, but it's like a foundation. We came from something. Poetry came from somewhere, but I think it's in order for poetry to stay relevant, it has to keep up with technology. I don't think it has a choice; it has to. And there are a lot of poets that I've read, and quite a few that I've met, that I think they get it. They understand that they have to do their best to keep on relating to the public. That poetry is a viable and living force. It's an entity. It can prosper. In these modern times. Right alongside with Twitter and Facebook and YouTube and all the other stuff. It's constantly vying for our attention.
Okay. There's an article that says you can tell a medium is still vital by posing this question: can it change anything? In your opinion, can poetry change anything?
I think so. Yes. Because I put poetry in the same level as I put great music or great art. Great poetry is just it's there because it helps you to have like an outlet, a vessel for your creativity. And we know that people can be very creative. And to me, whenever I'm in the zone and I'm writing, I feel connected with humanity, and at the same time, I feel very isolated. It's a very strange, dichotomy there. I often feel like, it's not me, it's through me, and I'm not a very religious person, I don't have a specific religion. In fact, I would say that I am atheist. But I like the idea of spirituality. I like feeling spiritual. I like, aspiring to things that seem like they're on a higher level of existence than just, me being like an animal. And I would say that since, art, music, and poetry are, to me, they're very spiritual mediums because it's a way to relate your emotions and your experience to other people. Like any sort of conduit of feeling is a spiritual experience. So that, for me, writing is my church. Writing is my God. Writing being, wrapped in a book, that really speaks to my heart. That to me is like, it's like meeting the divine. It's accessing, the spirit that, that dwells within all of us. The God, quote unquote God, that exists in the universe. That to me is, is as close to religion, any type of religion or worship that I've carried or hope to aspire to. I don't know if that answered your question.
So let's talk about the events real quick. How do you get your poetry out there? I mean, do you attend a lot of readings? Do you do like the Austin Poetry Festival, anything like that?
I need to do the Austin Poetry Festival. I haven't been to Austin to do poetry yet. Well, actually, let me take that back. I have been to Rita Maya. This was back in 2007. Yeah, but I didn't live in Austin at the time. I was just basically traveling through. I was hanging my hat there until I earned enough money from 2 jobs that I was working at in Austin to move up to Pittsburgh. And this was a year after I got out of the Army. So I have been to Rita Maya, which is a really great place in Austin for music and for open mic poetry. I definitely recommend that place. I have done a lot of poetry readings in the Houston area since I moved back around, I think it was 2010. Yeah, I think I moved back from Pittsburgh and moved back to Houston because my family lives in Houston in 2010. So since then, I've been, kind of making the rounds, especially in the Montrose area, generally there, in Webster, over at the Barnes & Noble. Whenever Zach and Dustin let me know that they're having something event, they let me know in advance and say yay or nay if I can actually make it. Because I work full-time at Half Price Books. I would say that, not as much as I'd like to be, on the scene, because a lot of people still don't know me. But the people who do, they recognize, like 1 or 2 poems that really spoken to them, and I was just so happy that, I was accepted, from the artistic community, especially when I was doing Taft Street Coffee House. The year I moved back, I was there almost every Tuesday, every single Tuesday night. Yeah, and I didn't care how much I was spending on gas. Because I go there for the fellowship, for the camaraderie, the people there. Even if I'm not reading that night, but I always try to read. I just wanted to hear what other people had to say. I'm just as interested in, other poets, and what they're performing on stage, what they're bringing, to the community than I am for me, because I can write for my own self, Just, the way that I feel about poetry is that it needs to be shared. But, if it takes a while for me to get it to that point, especially since I'm such a perfectionist, I don't often want to share something right away. I want to work on it, tinker it, like it's a statue, make it Michelangelo or something like that. I would still go out to poetry readings whether or not I had something to share. But generally I try to, because if there's somebody there, who knows me, they're going to usually expect me to bring something. And I might bring something from another poet, that I admire, just someone whose work, I always try to find something to read, even if it's, just a little bit. My time on the mic.
Has the internet helped you get your poetry out there a little bit?
Oh, definitely, because of Lulu.com, where I published Filthy Knowledge, my first book, my anthology, and Monkey Assassins, where I created Space.com. So for the second book, definitely. And I haven't uploaded many videos on YouTube. You're the first person who put me on YouTube. Because not that didn't occur to me, but right now I don't have a decent camcorder. So I was just like, sometimes I would just rather. I feel kind of awkward, setting up my own camera and talking. Because I'm not a very gregarious. Is that the right word to use? I don't really see myself as an on-air video personality sort of person. Like if I was working for television, I would just be a scriptwriter. I'd be working behind the scenes, or I'd be behind the camera. That's what I do. I don't really endeavor to perform in front, unless I really have to. So that's probably why I haven't done too many more videos. I mean, as many videos as I should do publicly. But hopefully that'll all change, because with more of the poetry that I write, I get more confidence, and I think I'm more capable of, presenting myself the way I would want to present myself in public. The camera is a tricky medium, I don't always trust it.
So what would you say to younger poets that are just getting their faces out there? What advice would you give?
Wow. I would say that if no one knows that you're a poet, let them know. Push yourself out to the open. Be more daring also in the types of poems that you write. Try to write outside your own perspective. Don't make it like some sort of like mopey diary entry. The more you read, the better off a writer you are. You should read everything you get your hands on, because that can only help to influence and develop your craft. And you should think of it as a craft. It's a job. It really is. I mean, you're not being paid for it, not yet. As a poet, most poets don't actually get paid day in day out for what they do. But you should definitely approach it as a job. Be serious about it, because that's the only way that other people are going to take you seriously. If you really want to get into poetry, join some clubs, organizations, that put on poetry events, that do live open mic sessions. You can start it yourself. Be a self-starter. Organize something on your own. Get people involved. Advertise in your local paper. Submit your own poetry to whoever wants to will allow you to be published in their paper. The only way that poetry is going to live and flourish is for people to be active, to be proactive, to make themselves known to the public.
I want to thank you for taking the time to do this interview with me. It's been great. Any last words for the camera?
Buy my book.
Tell them where your book's located.
Please buy my book. Filthy Knowledge. You can buy a copy from Lulu.com. It's probably around. They keep on changing the prices online. It's kind of silly. But I think it's like around $16 or $17. You could email me personally. I can give you email address. Well, actually, just to be up on Facebook. That's the easiest way. Everyone knows what Facebook is. In order for me to rattle off, my Yahoo, .com address is just silly. I can give you all the information that you want on Facebook. So just look me up, Brian Kehinde, Brian. My last name is Kehinde, Kehinde. My second book is called Monkey Assassins. That's a little bit easier to come by because it's on Amazon.com. It's actually on the UK, Amazon.com as well. So it's worldwide, as opposed to Lulu.com, which is only in the US. So I'd say, get into Monkey Assassins first, because I'm really happy about that book. I'm I'm proud of both my books, but Monkey Assassins really helps define me as to where I'm going as a writer, because I'm working on a novel, and there are quite a few pieces of Monkey Assassins as a buddy that are like short stories, like little fictions, that kind of like get you prepared for my next big step, which is working on my novel. I've been working on my novel for like almost a decade. I'm a perfectionist, that is. It's partly based on my experiences coming out in the Army, of all places. I was discharged, honorably discharged, for being gay back in 2006. So, the novel is partly autobiographical, I would say. And it's also very whimsical too. I kind of like make this kind of like a noir. It's like a suburban noir. It takes place mostly in Georgia, and it has soldiers and skaters in it. Yeah. So I would say if you're interested in any of my material, definitely seek me out on Facebook, and I will get in touch with you, and I will relay you to the proper channels and how you can actually order my stuff.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Weasel. Appreciate it.